Hi guys, my name's Nick Jennison. Today we're taking a look at two pedals from BakTrak, namely the VTD and the SFX. Now these are two updated versions of BakTrak's MP3 and .wav playback pedal. I happen to have the original sat right here. You may be familiar with this pedal, but if you're not, what it basically lets you do is load in a bunch of audio files, perhaps backing tracks or a song that you're working on or whatever, through the micro SD slot, and then you can play them back at the tap of your feet. It's all very cool, but what the new pedals offer that the previous pedal didn't is a super bright OLED display, which is going to tell you everything you need to know about the track that you have loaded up, which I'm sure you can appreciate is going to be very, very useful in a live situation, which is really where these pedals shine, although they're also really great practice tools, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Before we get into that though, I'm going to talk about the specifications, the features that these pedals offer. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about how I have it hooked up today and how you were listening to it in that little intro jam. So let's take a look at the VTD to begin with. So we have VTD, that stands for Visual Track Display, which refers to this OLED display here. It is super bright, so even in really bright sunlight you're going to be able to see exactly what's going on with the track you have loaded up. We have a rotary control to select a bunch of different tracks. We also have a level control, which is notched, which is quite interesting. I would normally expect a continuous control here, but these guys know what they're doing, so I'm guessing it's like that for a reason. Of course, I've set it on 12 to be one louder than Spinal Tap, because why not? And then we have a mode switch down here. Now, the mode switch essentially gives you three different modes of operation. We have essentially a performance mode, which is labeled P, with numbers 1 through 4. I'll explain those in a moment. We have a list mode, which is labeled L, and we have a BakTrak mode, which is labeled B. Now, each one of these modes is going to allow you access to a bank of 12 songs. Whether you set it on 1, that'll give you songs 1 to 12. If you set it on 2, it'll give you songs 13 and so on and so forth. So each one of these numbers refers to a bank of 12 songs. You can then select which one you're looking at with this track select control down here. But each one of the different modes, be it P, L or B, is going to give you a different functionality of the foot switch. Now, P, which is performance mode, is going to trigger the track that you have selected when you press this foot switch, and then when you press it again, it's going to go immediately to the next track. Now, this is for live performance, and it's basically going to allow you to go seamlessly from one backing track to another, and it's going to make your live performances nice and smooth. If you press and hold the foot switch, it's going to stop the track, and that will allow you to go back to the beginning of the same track if you so desire. Now, list mode is a little bit different. If we go to L over here, this is our list mode. What that's going to do is it's going to change the operation of the foot switch so that if you press the foot switch, it'll play the track. If you press it again, it'll pause the track. And then you press it a third time, it'll resume from the point that you paused at. Now, if you press and hold the foot switch, it's going to stop the track and go back to the beginning. So this is really useful if you have a particular backing track you want to play over a bunch of different times and you want to kind of pause it and pick up. This is probably the default mode that I would use this particular pedal in. Now, if we go further forward into the BakTrak mode, this is where things get interesting as a practice tool, because what this is going to do is it's going to set it up so that if you press the play stop button, it's going to start the track, and then if you press it again, it'll rewind the track by 10 seconds. Now, this is great for learning songs. So if you load a bunch of songs into the BakTrak, it's going to allow you to rewind the track with your feet without having to take your hands off the guitar to do so. Makes practicing songs and learning new material an absolute breeze. I'm sure you can appreciate. Now, every time you press this, it's going to rewind a further 10 seconds until it gets to the beginning of the song, and then it'll stop. So if you wanted to rewind 30 seconds, you could press this pedal 3 times in BakTrak mode, and it would go back 30 seconds, which is really, really useful. Nice, easy way to rewind songs and learn them if you're learning new material. Now, you can load up to 48 songs on the micro SD, which is included with the BakTrak pedal. It runs off a standard 9-volt power supply. It does run either center positive or center negative. The included power supply is center positive. I haven't checked it with center negative, which is standard 9-volt procedure, so I would get in touch with BakTrak and make sure that's okay before you try it, but the manual seems to suggest that it's going to work just fine. So other things to pay attention to, we have a trigger jack. Now this allows you to use essentially a remote jack and have this mounted on your mic stand, or you can have it on top of your amp or wherever it's convenient in your particular gigging setup, or you can have it on your desk, for example, and it's going to put the foot switch functionality on the floor while still keeping the BakTrak within arm's reach for changing tracks. Very, very useful indeed. I'm sure you'll agree. We have ins and outs, and this is going to enable you to route your guitar in and then out through the same outputs that the BakTrak's going out of. This is going to be super useful if you're limited on outputs. Let's say, for example, you're a busker running into a portable PA system and you only have 2 outputs. Well, you can go guitar into here and then out of here, plugged into a PA system or whatever, and it's going to mix your guitar in with the output of the backing track pedal. Or if you're like me and you're sitting at home in your little studio and you have plenty of inputs to play with, you can just run the output, and I'm running a TRS cable to 2 TS cables here, which is giving me a stereo split. Now this brings up some interesting implications for live use, because if you're running a click track, for example, you can prepare your tracks so that the click is, for example, on the left and the audio is on the right, and then you can take a split, you can send one side to your drummer's in-ears monitors so he can hear the click track and play along in time, and then you can send the audio that you want to send to the front of house to your front of house engineer. They won't get the click, they'll just get the audio, and it'll be very, very seamless, and your audience will appreciate that, because frankly nobody wants to hear the click through the front of house. Not a pleasant experience. To that end, I've actually prepared a track. I'll just show you this right now. This one right here. This is a kind of a prog rock sort of thing. I've done it in 7 to show you that I'm not using a generic click track. I've had to build this myself. I've put the click on the left, I've put the audio on the right. I'm going to play along, but what I'm going to encourage you to do here, if you're listening on headphones, is to take your left headphone out and you'll hear what's coming out of the right side, which is just the audio with no click. And then if you swap that procedure and take your right headphone out, you'll hear just the click. You'll hear my guitar playing along in both examples, but you'll be able to hear how you would use this in a live environment if you're running click tracks in a band with a drummer, or perhaps you just wanted to click to your own backing tracks to make sure you're playing along neatly in time. Let's take a listen to that now. So that's a closer look at some of the functionality of the VTD. Now the functionality on this pedal is exactly the same as you would expect on the smaller original BakTrak pedal. The only real difference is the display and the price. So if you don't need a display, you can get this one for a little bit less outlay, but personally I find the display very, very reassuring. Now the SFX is a little different in the sense that it doesn't have the BakTrak mode or the performance mode. It's strictly a player, but what you do get instead is 12 whole banks of 12 presets, so you can load a shocking number of songs. You can have 12 different sets in here if you're a solo performer, for example, and you also get track up and down buttons, which is really nice. That's a cool thing to have at your feet if you don't need access to the practice features of the BakTrak, for example. You don't need access to the performance mode or any of that kind of stuff. You just want stop and play and then track select. But you get the same stereo ins and outs, you get the same remote operation, runs on the same same power, and it's of course the same sturdy metal enclosure that is built for the rigors of the road. So there you go, guys. That's a little bit of a look at 2 updated pedals from our friends at BakTrak. They're a pretty unique offering, and if you use backing tracks, perhaps you're a clinician, you're a solo performer, or you just like jamming along to tracks and you want to have control over them with your feet, this is a blessing. It's really simple to use once you take a moment to figure it out. It's simple to load your tracks in using the included micro SD card. Can't say enough good things about this pedal. It is built to last, really simple to operate, and like I say, pretty unique. And if you don't need the display, you can always get the original one for a little less dollar and a little less pedal board space. One more time, this has been the VTD and SFX from BakTrak. My name's Nick Jennison. I highly recommend you check these out.